Good evening, godless sodomites.
As I think it is healthy for those who are religious to see that there is a contrary point of view.
Imagine no longer believing in God, in fact, even more boldly, being an atheist.
Push the atheist too far, and you're going to have an atheist movement. The atheists are going to fight back, and you might not want that. So be careful what you wish for, Christians.
You are tuned in to yet another podcast from the Angry Atheist.
I'm attempting conversation here with you.
Welcome to the Angry Atheist podcast, you godless sodomites. I'll give you a heads up. Brian Dunning has a new book out, Skeptoid 4. You can go to skeptoid.com/books and find Brian Dunning's new book. Do so immediately. Okay, now I've got a guest named Peter, who's a philosopher. He didn't use too many big words, so I want to thank him for that. I also want to thank him for introducing himself, so I wouldn't screw it up. Here's the podcast.
This is Peter Boghossian from the Portland State University Philosophy Department.
I'm glad that you said your last name, because I don't know if I could have pronounced it right.
Yeah, it rhymes with explosion, but with a B. Boghossian
okay,
explosion.
I'll try to remember that. Yeah, all right. You're a professor, huh?
Well, I teach philosophy in the philosophy department. It's a full-time job.
Yeah, you know, one thing I want to ask you, because there's a guy that I know on the internet who's an outspoken atheist, and he's been known to say a few times he doesn't think philosophy has any real worth in the world.
Oh, I know the name that you're not going to say. Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
I know the name that must not be spoken, right? Because we all respect the man.
Yeah, I respect. But I just was wondering if you could kind of give people an idea of how philosophy is beneficial and how it is used and how it's not, it does have worth.
Well, some philosophy, I think the essence of that criticism is that philosophy is untethered from reality. And oftentimes people have ideas that they're not grounded in anything, and there's no way to hinge those ideas back to reality. I don't know if there's one answer to that question. I think there's a multiplicity of answers to that question. I always think that philosophy can be used to improve the human condition, particularly as it relates to teaching people the importance of reason and rationality and how to use language very clearly and how to define your terms. And again, I don't think that it's philosophy as a discipline. It could be the way that philosophy has become compartmentalized in academia. I mean, it could be more of a function of university architecture than anything. I personally don't even think this is a minority opinion. People aren't going to like it, but I'm not really sure there's going to be philosophy in 20 or 30 years, maybe even 15 years.
Yeah. My dad was always interested in philosophy, and he was always upset because there was no modern day philosophers, really deep philosophers like he thought that it was dying out. And this was that's not true at all. No, that's not how I meant it. I didn't like Daniel Dennett is one of my favorite thinkers, perhaps my favorite contemporary thinker. But I think that increasingly we're going to see the domain of cognitive neuroscience eclipse philosophy. And I also think that we'll have a museum conception of philosophy in the same way we have a conception of art. You go into an art institution, you go into a museum and you see these pieces hanging on the wall and you trace the historical. So, this pointillism or what have you, this emerged from this tradition. And I think we're going to see that more and more in philosophy. Yeah, where it's all laid out, right?
Well, it's more of a historical understanding. I mean, people today are too sophisticated to, I throw out Descartes or the pineal gland and people look at me like people are too sophisticated. My own personal view is that philosophy can help people live better lives by teaching them how to work through problems and really laying the foundation for thinking critically, not just lip service to thinking critically.
That's what I was going to ask you. Can you define thinking critically or critical thinking? Can you define that term?
Sure. I read a study a while ago where they asked college professors, is it important? And I think it was 100%. You never see surveys of anything 100%. 100% of the people thought it was important, and 2% or what have you of the people could actually define it. So briefly, it's a skill set and an attitude. The skill set's pretty basic, pretty easy to teach. The attitudinal component or the attitudinal disposition is particularly difficult, and a lot of people don't focus on teaching it. I do, but a lot of people don't focus on it. So the skill set teaches you things like identifying fallacies, finding mistakes in reason, contradiction, or what have you. And then there are these core attitudinal components: a trustfulness of reason, a willingness to reconsider. In my opinion, those are the two biggies. So that, in a nutshell, is what critical thinking is. And that's a bottom line answer.
Willingness to reconsider. What about being too open-minded?
Too open-minded.
Yeah, because you got to have a line somewhere where you go, you know what, I'm not going to consider that because it's just silly. When somebody comes at you with an idea or a thought or a theory, or when somebody comes up to me and says, I believe in Bigfoot.
Yeah.
It's just I'm not even going to consider that. You know what I mean? And a lot of people, if you go, you know what, just dismiss them. You say that's just silly. There's no possible way that there's a Bigfoot out there because of this reason, that reason, those reasons. And they go, you're closed-minded because you won't even consider it. It's just like, yeah.
Yeah, I always consider empirical claims. The thing that I have a difficulty with is reconsidering moral claims.
Yeah.
But if somebody were to tell me, well, this Bigfoot, I'd say, that's fantastic. What evidence do you have for that?
Yeah.
But do you have a body? Do you have Bigfoot droppings? I mean, what is the reason for that belief? Because that's also an intervention right there. That's a possibility for you to help them, or it's a possibility for you to learn something new. Maybe there is a Bigfoot.
Well,
I highly doubt it.
Information, sure, I'd be willing to consider it, but at this point, I doubt if there's going to be proof of a Bigfoot with.
I don't even forget proof. I don't even think there's a shred of evidence for it.
Yeah.
But it's actually an interesting question. Like, why would someone believe that? What is it about? Is it something in the cognitive architecture, our brains, our minds, some kind of evolutionary predisposition for why people have these beliefs? Yeah, but again, we all enter these communicative interactions differently. I enter them to help people free themselves of delusion.
Yeah.
That's so that gets back to your earlier question about philosophy.
When you're trying to free people from delusion, it's not something you can do in one sitting, right? I mean, you've got to work on it.
You never know. Sometimes you can do it in 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Just had a conversation with a Mormon missionary the other day that got him to think. And sometimes you have conversations and people hate you and they come back to you a year. I mean, I have a year later or right after class ends. But again, it's different in the context of your life,
Yeah. I've always thought that if you were able to convince somebody that they were wrong on something they were really believed in, then they were probably a little wishy-washy, and the next day they were probably going to believe in something else. Or the next person who came along was going to be able to influence them to change their opinion again. I mean, if they're really entrenched in it, if they really believe it, and they've believed it for years, it's going to take time to get them out of it, even if they're totally delusional, which a lot of people are about religion.
Yeah.
It's time.
Yeah. I mean, it could be that certain people, probably is, that certain people have a propensity to believe things.
Yeah. I've always thought it was weird, the number of atheists that are conspiracy theorists. Not that there's a large amount, but there's more than I would think there was.
I don't know. I'd have to see that. It's pretty easy data to get. It's just survey data, but I've never heard of something like that. I would imagine it's quite low, but.
Yeah, but there's still, I've come across more than I would expect, is my point. I mean, I don't know what the actual percentage would be, but more than I would expect to see. And some people that I'm surprised that they're 9/11 truthers, and otherwise they're totally rational, reasonable people. It's like, wow, it's just.
Yeah, and that's why critical thinking should be the base and not atheism.
Exactly. Thank you.
So if we give people these tools and we teach them how to use these tools, they'll come to conclusions that they can rely upon that are more likely to be true.
Yeah, I think it's far more important to be a skeptical or critical thinker than to be just an atheist, and just not. You need to cover everything.
Yeah, the question is atheism a consequence of critical thinking or skepticism? So how long have you been doing your show?
This podcast, a year, or a little over a year. I've done a live radio show for like 5 years.
How's it going so far? What got you into this?
Into atheism or into podcasting?
Podcasting.
The podcasting was actually a result of some social interactions I was having with another person, who was being a dick. I did the radio show. I was only supposed to do 3 shows, and they were pretty much just to address this guy because it's far more effective when you address somebody verbally, like in a recording or on a radio program, than it is if you're typing it out on a keyboard. It's just different. And then you can always, it's different when you have a real conversation with somebody than if you're going back and forth in text on a key or on a thread on the internet. You usually get things resolved one way or the other a lot more quickly, and you can kind of get context and change things. So I started doing the show, and I decided I liked it, so I kept on doing it. It was actually started out as a paranormal show, my live show. And I was a skeptic and involved with people in the paranormal, and it was more of a commentary I would do on their interaction and their beliefs and why it was kind of silly for them to jump to conclusions.
May I ask your goal? Do you have something you want to accomplish, an objective?
No, there's not a solid objective. I do it mainly because I enjoy it. As long as I enjoy it, I'll keep doing it.
Right.
Also, the world really pisses me off sometimes, and it's an outlet for me.
Right.
And there's people that disgust me in the world that are victimizing other people, like Peter Popoff, and there's psychics and Kevin Trudeau, and just people like that. I feel like someone needs to say something about those people, and I'm here. I've got an opinion about it, so I'll say something about it.
Good for you.
Somebody's got to do something. A lot of people go, well, you're not going to stop them. Well, maybe I'm not going to stop them, but maybe I'll stop that one person who was going to give Peter Popoff money.
Right.
And if I can stop one person, then I'm all good.
Yeah, you're making a contribution.
Exactly. And if everybody would do that, or more people would do that, then pretty soon you'd have a pretty strong effect going on there.
I couldn't possibly agree more.
Yeah.
It's like a tide.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the atheism thing, I strongly believe that religion is hurting us. And it's already caused us harm that we can never repair. Just like stem cell research being slowed down because of religion.
Right.
No matter what happens, when stem cell research finally gets to the point where it's saving saving lives already, but when we get to the point where we've really got a grasp on it and we're really applying it and using it to save people's lives and give them better quality of life, there's still going to be that number of people who suffered because of the lag. There's still going to be a number of people who suffer and die because we just dragged our feet and we let religion kind of dictate what we're going to do with it, and it's wrong. It bothers me.
Well, good for you for making a contribution, and well, it's a good way to discharge your impulses while doing something productive.
Yeah.
So you found a good match.
Now, I know you're involved with the prison system in Oregon, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell me? I don't know. I don't want to saw a number, but in your opinion, is there a large number of atheists in prison? Because I know there's some debate on the number.
It's funny. A friend of mine who's actually a Christian, just did a study on that. I think his name is Tom O'Connor, Dr. Tom O'Connor, first-rate scholar. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at that data, but I can send that to you. You could post it on your page if you're interested. There's a study that someone just did, but pretty much it tends to be a small number.
Yeah.
I can't give you an exact number, though.
Because there's a lot of people that think that if everyone was to become an atheist tomorrow, that the prison population would pretty much go away. Do you think that?
I don't think it's causal like that. I think it's much more complicated. There are so many variables. I don't think that there's a root problem.
Isn't it kind of odd how people tend to think that atheists tend to think that if everyone became an atheist, that a lot of social problems would go away, and a lot of things that they kind of blame on religious people, social issues and social interaction issues. They think they'd go away, but I don't see a lot of them going away. I see us pretty much being the same. Even if everyone became an atheist tomorrow, we'd still have the same social problems interaction.
Well, if you substituted the word atheism for critical thinking, then I think you might be moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
So can I tell you what I'm thinking about doing now and get your opinion about it? So I'm going to tell you my medium-term plan. I would like to debate Muslim apologists in the Middle East.
That should be interesting.
Yeah, I'd like to be the guest along with a friend of mine, Matt Thornton. Talked about this with him extensively. I'd like to be the invited guest of Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Iran, what have you. And I would like to debate in an open, publicized, televised forum Muslim apologists.
Nice.
I have a guy who wants to do the documentary. I came up with a title for it called Unthinkable. I told my wife about it. She said she has a new title called Stupid.
Very brave.
She's not too crazy about the idea.
Yeah, you could call it either brave or stupid.
But I think we need to have this dialogue. And I think, so I'll speak directly to those governments now. I think that this is a fantastic opportunity to do a number of things. One of those things is to show people, the outside world, that the reputation that has been cultivated for being insular and closed-minded and intolerant is just false. And by inviting me as your official guest to debate your top thinkers, your top Islamic scholars, I think that would be a good indicator. The second point is I think that if it really is true that Islam is, Muhammad had revelations and Islam is directly in lawful alignment with reality, then how fantastic that you could air that and have people listen. And in fact, let's just relate that to the conversation about Bigfoot. We just had a conversation about Bigfoot, and I told you in no uncertain terms that if someone showed me evidence for Bigfoot, sufficient evidence to warrant belief, then I would believe in Bigfoot. And that basically is the attitudinal disposition. So yeah, I would like the governments in the Middle East to invite us to debate their top Islamic scholars in a public forum, which is then televised.
That would be interesting.
I think so.
It would be interesting the response or the reaction you would get to it.
Yeah, and I'm going to make a prediction to you.
Yeah.
I predict that I think I'll actually end up doing this. I think that you know who I think will be mad at me as a result of this? You know who I think will be extremely upset at this? Who? The left.
Oh, yeah.
I think they'll be upset because they'll accuse me of, quote, riling these people up, unquote.
Yeah. Now, do you think Islam is a peaceful religion or?
Boy, what a question there. I think there's a wide spectrum of differences. Sam Harris calls it the hierarchy, the odium of hierarchy or something of that nature. Yeah. I don't think that Islam or Christianity, or even if you leave the Abrahamic traditions, I think that it's too complicated. And this is not sidestepping your answer. I'll answer your question directly, but I'll say this.
I understand.
There is no monolithic Islam. Even Shia Islam or Sunni Islam, different people practice their traditions and they merge them with cultures. But no, I do not think that there's anything inherently venomous in Islam. I mean, you have billions of not billions, but you have, I don't know, the overwhelming majority of Muslims are reasonable, decent people who live just like you and me. They're thinking about their kids sick, their mom's sick, they've got a new, whatever. They're just like us. They're navigating reality to the best of their abilities.
Yeah.
They're just institutionalized mechanisms in place in these governments that prevent them from thinking about these issues in a more open way. But no, I don't think that there's anything. I do think that there are specific passages in the Quran that are toxic, and I think that there are specific passages in all texts that are toxic. I do think at this particular time in history, it happens to be more conspicuously dangerous than other religions. But even answering that question, I think that we have this tendency to have a religious egalitarianism, to think that all religions are equal and that someone says, well, we have this problem with Islam. Well, you have your problem in America with the Westboro Baptist Church or all these people. Yeah, I don't think that there's a parallel there. But I do think that there's something that's a manifestation of a cultural value that we have, particularly that the left has. The left has put forward. They're my next targets when I'm finished with faith, by the way.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, because they have made accommodations for the faithful, and we have to revoke those. So that's what I think.
It's interesting how many people think that the Westboro Baptist Church can be compared to the problems that they have with Muslim fanatics, right?
Yeah, it is fascinating.
Not quite the same deal. I mean, I do think the Westboro Baptist people are probably more Christian than any other group I know of. They actually follow the Bible and take it at its word.
That's why interactions with those people will be very sincere and very genuine.
Yeah.
You know exactly where they stand, and they know exactly where you stand.
Yeah, I find them very interesting and kind of boring now. I mean,
yeah.
How long can you say the same thing over and over and over? You're going to hell. They're not trying to save anyone. They're not trying to recruit anybody. So I'm kind of curious sometimes if they did try to recruit, what kind of response they would get. If they would get anybody who would actually take them, or how many people. I'm sure they would get people, but how many people would take them up on there?
I don't know. I do think that that's a consequence of living in a free society.
Yeah.
Toleration only works when there's reciprocity.
Yeah.
So we live in a free country. Said people misuse what that means, but dealing with the Westboro Baptist Church, that's just something that we have to deal with, and we should deal with as adults in a civilized society.
Yeah, people are using it doing pretty good now. I mean, when they first came out, they were a little bit, I don't know, it was like a knee-jerk reaction. They just wanted to get rid of them and quiet them, and now they're kind of a little more tolerant, and they're kind of using the parody of them, where they come up with separate banners, or opposite banners, just making fun of the God Hates Fags banners. I think is a good tactic.
I don't know the best way to deal with them. I think maybe ignoring them would be the best way to deal with them.
I think that would ultimately be the best way, but it just seems like it's impossible to expect people to do that.
There's no question that it really upset me. Probably should even say that to give them some kind of legitimacy, but to protest the funerals of servicemen, I mean, that is just, wow.
Yeah, I think
people who died fighting for this country, to do that is just, reprehensible and repugnant doesn't even begin to describe what that is.
Yeah. It bugs me, too, when they were protesting the guy who was beat to death, the homosexual guy who was beat to death. I can't remember his name. We just saw it on a documentary, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was years ago. But
Matthew Shepard?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
We just watched a documentary on how the Bible has affected people's attitudes on homosexuality, or how religion has affected people's attitude on homosexuality, and how it's kind of kept gays from getting their rights and broken families up. And it was pretty sad. There was one lady who her daughter had come out to her, and she had slammed her because of religion. And she tried to make up with her daughter years later, and her daughter pretty much told her, go to hell, I'm not interested, and then ended up killing herself about 3 months, 6 months after that.
It's a shame.
It's a really, really sad story.
What a tragedy.
I know. For what? For what? The gall of some people to say that they want to protect the sanctity of marriage and keep gays from getting married because they want to protect the sanctity of that word, when 50% of the people who get married end up in divorce. The rates go up when they're married the second and third times. Sanctity, Yeah,
it is. It's always interesting to me that homosexuality takes some special place. And it's fun. All these podcasts I do, that it always comes up. Who brought that up? You brought that up, didn't you? Yeah, it's brought up as a consequence of what happens when people believe silly things.
Yeah.
Real people get hurt as the consequence.
Yeah, that's what I've been trying to make that point, where when you have beliefs that are based on fantasy or made up things or whatever you want to call them, nursery rhymes, fairy tales, you very rarely is the result going to be fair or equal to other people.
Right. That's because it's self-arbitrary.
Yeah.
And the process by which people came to those conclusions is arbitrary.
Yeah. So I was kind of using the example, like I guess the psychic that I've been battling with here lately, and he's insisting that he has these powers. These magic
great!
Powers.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, he won't take the James Randi.
You stole the next word out of my mouth.
Yeah, I knew that was going to be it. So.
Why not?
This a couple times before. So.
Because let me guess. Because money affects it, right? So
he takes the position that he doesn't need to prove himself to anyone.
Well, here's what I would do. Probably best to tell you this off air, but here's what I would do. I would ask him. I would find something he could not possibly disagree with, like pictures of kids dying of cancer or something like that, and say, wouldn't it be great if we could help these kids? You want to help these kids. Absolutely. Well, if you take the James Randi challenge, you can give $1 million to these children.
I've done that already.
Oh, really? What did he say?
I told him, I said, because he said something about not needing the money too, at the same time. I said, why wouldn't you do that and take that money and use it for whatever you wanted to? You felt in the world was being neglected and could use the money, whether it was animals or whatever. He doesn't respond. He chooses to ignore me.
Well, Well, to me, I'll tell you what that says to me. I'm not going to psychoanalyze the guy. I'm just getting it from you. But he doesn't believe it. No. He doesn't believe what he claims. He's disingenuous.
No, I have a pretty good idea that he doesn't. He's he was on A&E on a show called Psychic Kids, where he was helping teenage kids who had episodes where they thought they were seeing dead people. He was helping them to hone those talents, to improve their abilities, and actually incorporate those abilities into their real life, so that they.
Even that they give him a venue for that. Like, how crazy is that?
I know, A&E too.
God, but it just goes to show you that these problems are I probably shouldn't even laugh at it. It's probably more serious, but I don't know, what other response can you have to laugh when you're faced with so asinine, so silly?
Yeah, it's so just irresponsible. Yeah. I I've been looking into like the conditions and why kids have those kind of episodes, and there's the reasons are disturbing. And to see that nobody, even if it was all scripted and fake, at some point you think they'd give a little disclaimer or do a public service announcement saying, if you do have these issues, here's where you can find help.
Exactly.
And there's none of that happening. It just really bugs me a lot.
I think it's because I don't know this. It's not my business, but I think it may be because it sells.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
People like that. People like to see, what is that show, Ghost Hunters and all these shows? God, sci-fi has really been co-opted by these ridiculous shows.
I know.
Are you a sci-fi fan?
No, I don't watch a lot of TV. TV doesn't impress me anymore.
Oh, well, you're watching the wrong stuff. Fringe is really good. Fringe had a great season.
I like The Big Bang Theory. That's
good show. Game of Thrones had another good season.
There's some good stuff that's on, but I just don't watch TV as a habit, I should say. I'll watch it once in a while and watch the news or whatever, and watch some public television, but it's just mostly crap. And
what do you do? Do you read books, articles? What do you do?
Yeah, I do a lot of reading. Mostly online reading, but I read a lot. Just for, getting preparation. That's one thing about doing the radio show and the podcast that's good too, is I'm learning all the time. I'm always learning something. If I read a news article and I want to check the sources, and I learn in there, like talking to you today, obviously I'm going to learn some things I didn't know before. So I figure in another 10 years, I'm going to be pretty freaking smart.
Yeah. Can I ask how old you are now?
I'm 43.
Oh, I'm 45. Okay, cool.
Yeah, we're close.
So if I may ask, so what have you learned recently? Oh, and then that's the first question. Second question, do you research your guests before they come on?
Actually, no, I don't do that, because I'd like to go in cold where I can kind of learn without any kind of bias or any kind of, Actually, I'll take that back a little bit. I did look last night just to see where you were from, because I was interested in the prison system that you were.
I see.
So I looked into that a little bit, and that's where I came up. I was kind of asked you about the percentage of atheists that were in there, but.
Oh, I see.
Other than that, I like to go in cold because it's just I can learn without any bias, and I'm kind of new at it, and it helps to create content for the show anyways, because you've got to explain everything to me. I don't know anything. I know nothing.
Right.
The listeners probably, not all of them, but some of the listeners are going to be in the same position so that they can better understand what we're talking about, I think.
So what do you think within my field of expertise, what do you think your listeners would like to know? I mean, you can ask me anything you want. And if I don't know, my golden rule is I will say, I don't know.
Shoot, I don't even know what they'd like. My listeners are some of them are very fickle. Some of them, they don't listen to anything. I would like you, if you would, to tell me the story of how you came to be an atheist. Were you always an atheist? Were you religious at one time? Or?
I don't use the term atheist, and I've gotten a lot of grief from people about that lately.
Term, yeah.
Well, I how did I come to atheist? Well, it's both simple and complicated. I've never been a believer. I've never used faith as a process to know the world. My parents did take me to Sunday school, this Armenian church in Massachusetts, Watertown, Massachusetts. I always considered it a profound waste of my Sunday. We went to Sunday school, and then I went to the church service, but that wasn't what turned me into someone who was a vocal atheist. I was just a non-believer. The more I've been teaching critical thinking for 22 years now. I've taught just literally tens of thousands of people. And I've been in a unique position in that I've been able to ask people about why they believe certain things. And then I reflected on why I believe certain things, and then I reflected upon different ways to teach people how to think critically, and I started adopting those myself and boil it down to a few principles. And I realized the more that I asked people about things, the more I realized that they just did not have good reasons for believing what they profess to believe. So there's simply no evidence to warrant belief in God. There's just none.
Yeah.
Forget about any organized religion. I mean, that's just totally. I'm just talking about kind of first mover, prime mover, Aristotle stuff, like who got the ball rolling. So then I realized that this is, well, as we've talked about today, this is creating serious problems for our species. This is now a species-wide problem. So I decided to speak out against it and do what I could. But unlike yourself and Hitchens and many others, I try not to speak about religion and try to speak about what I consider to be the root of the problem, which is the faith virus.
Yeah.
If you can deal with the faith virus, you don't have to worry about religion. Take care of itself.
Yeah. God is way different. Is a far different subject than religion. The two are two totally different subjects. When you're talking about the existence of God and religion, I just think they're just You got to deal with them separately, I think.
Yeah, and having faith. Faith itself is the problem.
Yeah, it is a problem. Now, were your parents really religious, or are they still religious, or are they?
No, my dad was an atheist agnostic, probably closer to agnostic. I'm not sure. Certainly not in terms of organized religion. My mom was raised Catholic, and she still bears the trappings of those Catholic superstitions.
Yeah.
Very much so, actually. And I think we haven't explicitly talked about it because she sometimes listens to these podcasts. But I think she's somewhat of a practicing Christian, though I'm not sure.
Yeah. I just don't even know how anybody could be Catholic these days. I just don't. Church just, I'd be so disgusted with the church and the way they've handled their problem.
Remember that the faith virus is potent, and it has built into it mechanisms that prevent people from challenging or questioning it.
Yeah.
And I think we have to decouple faith and religion from morality.
Yeah.
These things are put forward as moral systems. And that is, as I see it, that's one of the principal problems. He asked about philosophers, what your dad said about philosophy. Daniel Dennett has written some fantastic stuff about that. So yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I was saying that's interesting. You're right. And I just think that, what worse subject could you have? Could you have anything worse than child abuse? Or
call it for what it is. It's child rape. It's institutional, systematized child rape.
Yeah. I mean, what worse thing could happen to tell people, hey, you know what? You need to do some reconsideration of this.
Right.
And it's just, I know that it's had its effect, but I just think it would be stronger than it has been even.
A friend of mine said something interesting. He said, "You better hope that the Catholic Church doesn't fall." And I said, "Well, why would that be?" He said, "Because they're a bulwark against Islam. And if you think that there really is some kind of hierarchy of odium with Islam at the top," I said, if one thinks that, I'm not saying I think that, then that would make sense that you wouldn't want the Catholic Church to fall.
Yeah.
I don't buy into that notion either. By the way, this is the same guy who told me that he had a great point. Western democracies aren't sufficiently, how do you want to say it? We don't have the capacity to deal with these radical elements, these radical religious elements. So what we need to do is we need to cultivate our own crazy people, our own crazy religious minorities, and have these people kind of battle against each other.
Nice. A new kind of war.
Yeah, I just thought, I don't agree with any of those thoughts, but I thought that they were interesting.
They are interesting. You're
right. They gave me pause. But I interrupted you. I'm sorry. What were you going to say?
No, that's okay. I was going to ask you about the current generation of young people. You thought that there was a large number of, what's the breakup between who's believers and who are non-believers? Do you have a?
Boy, I just saw something about that just recently. I think it was on a popular press like CNN. Was it on CNN? I think it was on CNN that showed that the number of people professing to be atheist or agnostic is increasing. So that's good. There's some hope there.
Yeah.
That's hopeful.
I can speak to it like where I'm at, but I'm in California, so it's like it's going to be far different than asking somebody in Kansas.
No, that's right, and I think we're pretty much geographically similar and demographically similar because I'm in Oregon.
Oh, yeah, we'll be close then. You guys aren't quite as hip as we are, but you guys are close. So
I don't know about that. We're pretty hip. This is a great place to live. Portland is
I love Oregon.
It's
awesome.
Yeah, it's purple or red once you get out of Portland. Is very blue, and I've tried to avoid politics as much as possible because I think when these discussions come down to politics, we're always making a mistake. But it's a nice place to live. I really like it. It's
hard to avoid politics, though, isn't it? These days.
It is, but to me, and I'm really not a Democrat and I'm not a Republican for different reasons. But I think it's always a mistake to make a discussion political when it's look. This is the way that I envision the discussion, and I just saw this debate or just watched a couple minutes of this debate. It was something like, is religion beneficial, or is it? What are the benefits of religion, or what have you? That's a mistake. It's a mistake to talk about that. It's a mistake to talk about – anytime you're talking about things, there are these underlying issues that you're really talking about. I think the underlying issue is faith, and that's what we need to be talking about. So that's right. And faith is antithetical to critical thinking because faith is believing on something on the basis of no evidence or insufficient evidence or what have you, and critical thinking is belief on the basis of evidence. But I think oftentimes people will react negatively to conversations about and deeply personal. So I saw this car had a bunch of bumper stickers. That person evidently really despised Obama. That's really the end of the conversation. There's no way into that conversation. You know, it had like Obama, I think he had a SWAT sticker or something with the,
Nice. Yeah.
you know, Obamacare and all this business. I just don't think that having those discussions is productive in terms of what I want to do to help people to liberate themselves of the faith virus.
Yeah.
So personally, I try to avoid those. Although I'm happy to talk about politics if you want.
No, we don't care. I don't care if we talk about politics.
Yeah.
you know, and it's like it's got me upset, but so we can avoid it. It'll be fine with me. I'm not a Democrat or Republican either. I don't think anybody should be a Democrat or Republican. If I'm going to talk about
agree.
Politics, I talk about the limitations people put on themselves in any, not just politics, but to say I belong to Group X and just let that group dictate what people's opinions are and the way you think.
Right.
Just is silly to me.
See, you nailed it. You put your finger on it. So that's the problem. The problem is that, you really buy into this whole ideology wholesale. So there's nothing the Democrats, nothing, or the Republicans.
Exactly.
Nothing. Every single thing they say is venomous. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, please. Then you're not thinking critically. Then you're not really examining. So I think there's an evolutionary basis for that, so that we evolve these ideologies. We evolved these. They're filters. They act to filter out certain ideas or what have you, so that we can better navigate reality.
Yeah, it's just interesting how many people limit themselves, and they don't even seem to realize that they're limiting themselves. They're just like, well, I just do that. I just vote for Democrat. It's like, okay, well, I can't do that. And it bothers me greatly that I wasn't going to talk about politics, but it bothers me that when you've got people who are against the president just because they don't like him, he can't do anything right. When you're saying I'm going to vote for this candidate, but just because I want to get this guy out, and you don't care about any other position that he has, it's dangerous. It's very scary.
Yeah, it is.
It is scary, and I hope that it turns out all right. I'm worried that it's not going to, but because of complacency, if nothing else, I think.
Well, these are unquestionably difficult economic times.
Yep.
Europe is, and I'm not an economist. I'm not really qualified to talk about economics, but
me either. So we're even. Yeah.
Well, there we go. We're just two guys.
Two dummies talking about something they don't know anything about.
Yeah, and everybody else is listening to us talk about things we don't know anything about. The good thing, though, and this is what I think makes us different from the faithful, that neither one of us are pretending to know things we don't know. You say you don't know about economics. I say I don't know about economics. We talk a little about economics we know about. That's called an honest conversation. Yeah. I'm not pretending that there are these entities. I'm not pretending to know something about economics that I don't know.
And those are important conversations to have too, because even though you don't know something, and I think sometimes it's better, or I can benefit more from a conversation with somebody who doesn't know, because they don't have any bias, they don't have any preconceived, thought. They come on fresh and new, and they'll sometimes see things that you wouldn't see otherwise, because you're just, I don't know, just like at my job, I work in the technical field. And I'll have a new guy come in, and I don't know how many times while training him, he'll make observations or say something, and I'll go, yeah, you know what? You're right. We could do it that way. It might work better that way, or it does do that, and I didn't realize it was doing that. Just because I'm just used to doing it, and I don't think about it in the same way as a person who was fresh and new would.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. I do a lot of jiu-jitsu. Do you know what jiu-jitsu is?
No, a little bit, but not enough.
It's basically like wrestling, and I'm like you, I'm getting up there. I'm 45, so I don't throw punches anymore. Yeah. But I love it. But one of the things that it has in it that's just so interesting to me is it has this built-in corrective mechanism so that you can figure out what you're doing wrong. It's really interesting to me to roll people. It's called wrestling. To roll or to wrestle with people who are just beginning and have no experience whatsoever. It's fascinating because you can see the mistakes that they make. People who begin jiu-jitsu, they make the same mistakes. They try to use force. They don't relax. Their posture's bad. And you can kind of extrapolate from white belt through this continuum of belts so you get to the top. But there really is something about a corrective mechanism that critical thinking has, jiu-jitsu has, that faith doesn't have, and that religion doesn't have. They're just a way to bring your cognitions in lawful alignment to what is. So you're not in make-believe land anymore.
Yeah. Let's talk about the word faith. If I say I have faith that the sun's going to rise tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's a different type of faith?
Well, I addressed this extensively in a talk, and I know you go in cold, and I respect that.
Yeah.
It might be interesting for you to check out that May 6th talk. It's both on YouTube and Dawkins posted on his site. I personally think,
and then I'll include it so that people can refer to it if they want to.
Okay, cool. The title of the talk is Faith: Pretending to Know Things You Don't Know.
Okay.
So the key is when you talk about faith, the way you talked about faith is not the way that the faithful talk about faith.
Yeah.
It's the way they would love faith to be talked about. So faith, I argue in this, you should only use the word faith in a religious context.
Okay.
And we need to, in the talk, I disambiguated faith and hope, faith and confidence, faith and trust. Faith claims are knowledge claims. Faith claims are knowledge claims. So when you say, if I say to you, do you believe Jesus Christ walked on water? And you say, yes, I do. I say, how do you know that? You say, I have faith.
Yeah.
Okay. That's different from saying, I hope.
Yep.
You can hope for anything you want. That's not a knowledge claim. And so the main deliverable there is don't use the word faith unless it's in the context of religion, because faith and hope are not the same things. And that is part of the conclusion. Once one understands that a faith claim is a knowledge claim, everything will become clear. The whole conversation, the very essence of what you're talking about will change.
That's just another hurdle we need to hop over. I think that and the definition of the word theory and the way it's used.
Yeah, that just came up in the last podcast I did with the Good Atheist. You're absolutely correct.
So is there any other words that are like that? I can't.
Tons of words like that. Yeah. Rationalize and misused all the time.
Too many. Yeah.
Faith and evidence. Proof and evidence are misused all the time. Yeah. And even one of the reasons I don't like to call myself an atheist is because people think that there's some kind of parallelism between the word atheist and the word believer, as if an atheist is absolutely says no matter what, like Bigfoot that you talked about Bigfoot. Yeah. Absolutely what no matter what. You show me the corpses, you show me the wherever the lair or the hive or wherever this make-believe species goes, you show me I'm still not going to believe. People of faith tend to think that that's what the word atheist means.
Absolutely, they do. Yeah, you're right.
So there isn't a parallelism there, and I think we get more purchase personally by using the word skeptic. Yeah. Although I must say it depends on what your role is, what you conceive role is. My role when I enter into any of these communicative interactions, no matter how small, even a person at the bank, is to help people formulate more reliable processes of reasoning. The best way to do that is to find the thing that's preventing them from thinking clearly. And almost invariably, it's faith.
Yeah, you're right. I was going to ask you if there was something you thought that atheism was doing wrong, and I would guess that you probably answered it already.
I have one more thing to say.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's this monolithic atheism movement. I think that different people like yourself and others make their contributions in different ways. The Four Horsemen, Sam Harris and Dawkins and Hitchens and Dennett, they all made their contributions. And there's a local podcast fellow that does the Malcontents Gambit. He's made his contribution. But I do think that where we, again, the monolithic where we can improve is not just taking people's faith away from them, but replacing it with reason and rationality. Talking to people sincerely and genuinely about the benefits of that. The Center for Inquiry just put me on their speakers bureau, and one of the goals that I would love to see, I'm writing my book, so I'm a little busy this summer, but one of my goals is to do just that, is to use that as a vehicle, not just to take away people's faith, but to talk about reason and rationality and how to institutionalize those, and how to even in a communication when you're talking to somebody, how to tear down the faith virus and then replace it with reason and rationality, and then to steer people in the right direction, to community groups, to places where they can discuss these things openly with other people.
Yeah, we need more groups like that, I think.
We do, and it's not just about taking people's faith away, and it's not just about taking people's religion away. We need to talk to them about science. We need to talk to them about how to make better decisions in better communities through reason.
I think we need to also provide more social, because I know a lot of religion has social value to people. That's the only thing, the God thing doesn't really matter as much as they get interaction with people through their church.
Absolutely.
That and charity. You know,
So
religion
just
does a good job on that.
just that right there. Somebody said, "Well, can you go to church and be rational?" One of my students says, "Of course you can. You can sing songs and be rational." I was just listening to this new band that I've been listening to the other day. You can read poetry and be rational. The problem isn't that you bowl with the guys in your synagogue every Friday night. That's not the problem. The problem is faith. The problem is that you're making claims about things that can't be known. You're pretending to know something you don't know. Yeah. That's the problem. And then that has consequences. So the problem, as I see it, isn't that people go together and get together for these social interactions. The problem is when people make knowledge claims.
Yeah.
And you can make all the knowledge claims you want. Just talk about Bigfoot or whatever you want. That's great. You want to make a knowledge claim? That's fantastic. But you have to have sufficient evidence to back that up. And that's the attitudinal part, don't believe it. Yeah. And the tricky part is not teaching people what constitutes certain evidence, although I will admit I don't want to whitewash that. That is somewhat difficult. But it's actually getting them or helping them to not believe something that's false.
Now, if people want to learn more about or hear more about you or read more about what you've written, because I know you've written a lot, where can they go to find that?
Well, a lot of my stuff is on Philosophy News. He's been very gracious to host that. Dawkins has posted a lot of my stuff, and he's been incredibly gracious to post that. I post some stuff on my PSU homepage. You can listen to podcasts or lectures or papers about faith articles. Hopefully I have some more interesting articles about faith. You know, it's funny. I literally slaved away. I was an adjunct instructor for years, and I just drive from one school to the next teaching. I don't even know how many people. I mean, just a course load that would just be crippling. And I'd come home and I'd write every night, like clockwork. And I did that for so long, and really nobody ever wanted to hear about that. You know, like literally tens of thousands of hours of what I consider to be meticulous scholarship or at the very least some pretty serious scholarship, nothing. I publish one article, everybody goes berserk, and people ask me about faith. And I'm happy to talk about faith. It's one component of what I do, but it's certainly not the whole enchilada by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah. But it is interesting that's what people want to hear about.
It is interesting, how that happens.
Yeah, and I think it's funny. You know, I look at the people in my department, and gosh, there are just so many really, really smart people. I mean, just amazingly talented people. And this isn't artificial humility or anything. I'm simply not as smart as some of the people I work with. And I just talk about like raw light bulb power or knowledge in the history of philosophy. I mean, these people are just amazing. Yeah. And it's just fascinating how just this road we all travel. You know, we publish one article, and the next thing you know, I mean, I get solicitations from people to write stuff, and I don't know, it's interesting.
It is interesting how one thing will grab people's attention, and the thing usually that you didn't think was going to be doing anything, you know, the thing you just thought it would go by without notice.
Yeah, I mean, is it really? It never even occurred to me that people would think, because I had been saying it for years, not in the context of faith, that one should believe on the basis of evidence. But once you start talking about that in terms of faith, then everybody's up in arms. Yeah. But they're usually not up in arms about other people's faiths. Like if they're faithful and you talk about a different faith. Exactly. Right? Yeah. So it's interesting. And it's interesting how we treat these claims in academia. We cower from them. And,
it's also interesting how religions consider other religions, you know.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I love how if an atheist group has a protest against a Christian display, nativity display or whatever, that the Christians will very often put up a menorah or something from the Jewish religion and say, okay, there, everybody's covered now, you know?
Right.
Really? You know, come on.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that we haven't taken these issues and we haven't given these issues the thought that we have. And we still have these institutional mechanisms that prevent people from engaging in a genuine conversation about these things. Yeah. You know, I get complaints lodged against me or what have you, or we're really, when it comes to faith or when it comes to religion, everything, reasonable, rational discourse or inquiry is suspended. That's why, by the way, I really hope that Islamic governments take me up on their offer to debate Muslim apologists.
That would be very interesting. I'd like to see that happen.
Oh, I would as well. I just need my safety guaranteed, And then I'm happy to go and debate their best and their brightest.
Yeah.
And we can talk about faith. We can talk about the Quran. And I have read the Quran 3 times, but by no means am I a Quranic scholar.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would be interesting.
Yeah, it would be interesting. We're almost out of time, so
Okay.
I'll ask you to, do you have any parting words for the listening audience before we?
I do. I think everybody can make a contribution. Everybody can do something to help rid the world of the faith virus. Among the things that people can do is you cannot use the word faith in a non-religious context. We talked about that. You can educate yourself, and you can, when you engage people in these conversations, and if you find yourself engaging people about, again, I would recommend that you stick to faith as opposed to religion, but that's fine. There is no one strategy that I would recommend for everyone. But if you do find yourself engaging in these conversations and you are making a difference, don't leave people out in the cold. Don't create adversarial relationships with people. Don't leave people out in the cold. Look at people who have caught the faith virus as people who are in legitimate need of mental health. They have mental health issues. It is a cognitive sickness. So you shouldn't be mad at them. You shouldn't be upset with them. But if you do help to liberate them of their faith, try to replace that with talk to them about community resources, places they can go. Those are my parting words.
I think those are great parting words.
Oh, thanks.
Just get people to apply them now.
Yeah, and the most important thing is, I think, it's not creating an adversarial relationship, because it is easy to get frustrated. But again, if you look at this as a mental health issue, and if you look at this as, because there is the distinction between a healthy cognition and unhealthy cognition is not spurious.
Yeah.
And we know that different faith claims make different traditions, and people believe these absolutely, and we know they can't all be correct. And I think the best way to look at this is to just think about this in terms of someone who has caught a virus. If somebody caught a virus, you wouldn't be mad at them, right? You would try to help them. Exactly. Faith is a virus. But in addition to trying to help them, make sure that they receive, whatever recuperative, physical therapy or some cognitive therapy, something else
fluids
to help them. Yeah, fluids or what have you. They don't just leave them in the cold. Those are my parting words.
Yeah, and it's also, I think it's a good point that it's important that you don't just go in and start out creating an adversary of them, I know a lot of people that just the first sentence that comes out of their mouth, there's no way they can go from there. There's no way they can continue from that point, because they've already turned the person off. Even if it doesn't matter what they said, that person's going to disagree with them just because.
Right, and the best approach, I think, is right from the get-go, listen. Really listen, but not just to the metaphysical claims, but to the epistemological ones, right? In other words, listen to the process of reasoning that they have. Like, how did they come to know what they claim to know? Once you figure that out, well, then you can map out an appropriate intervention to help liberate them of the virus, right?
Yep. All right, cool. Hey, Peter, thanks for hanging out with me.
My pleasure. It's been a good chat. I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate what you do.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
All right, man. Talk to you later.
And that's going to wrap up this podcast. I want to thank Peter for hanging out with me and for not using too many big words. I only had to pull the dictionary out a couple times, like I said. So I can't thank him enough for that. I want you to make sure you check out the links to Peter's website and his material. There can be found on the podcast description. So make sure you check those out. Hope you all enjoyed the new intro. If you didn't enjoy it, feel free to drop me an email, but please be polite. My feelings get hurt very easily. I'm very sensitive. Thanks, and thank you for listening. Appreciate it. Don't forget to share the podcast with your friends and neighbors, friends, relatives, your priest, whoever. Pass it around. It's free. Why not give it away? I'll see you next podcast.